for you. Choose wisely. On fire once again, and this is the 11th episode of the Manhood Chronicles, bringing it to you live from the Tar Heel State, the city of Oaks, the greatest state in the Union. We're going to have guest Ed Baxter on today, and he's going to be talking about a series of issues related to manhood and how to overcome the perils of divorce. We're going to be talking about strategies and programs that can help men overcome their depression and using practical terms to move forward in this critical time, in this critical crisis in America. Ed is the relationship odds for divorced men, and he's a staunch advocate for helping men circumnavigate pain and the onerous impact of heartbreak of betrayal. Specializing in helping men get back on their feet after divorce, Ed Baxter is the mechanical wizard of helping the hundreds of divorced men through genuine attraction and move on after betrayal over the last 15 years. By taking the industrial engineering systems approach to dating and relationships, Ed uses logical yet heart-based teachings to overcome shyness and confusion and teach men how to overcome narcissism and abuse and dating the kind of women that they've always wanted and having lasting relationships. Once again, we're in the greatest state of the Union, where the oceans are clean, the grass is verdant green, and the mountains are pristine. The city of Oaks, the Tar Heel State, where every day is Father's Day. As I'm your host, Seven Smalls, the agitator for male empowerment, where manhood is a journey, not a destination, where manhood is a series of hills and valleys, victories and failures. Whereas men, we may not always agree on all the things, but we come together as allies of common cause, only to dissipate once the crisis is over. So we have Ed Baxter, what I call the relationship expert or the relationship wizard. And we're about to chop it up and have a comprehensive conversation on how to overcome abuse and narcissism in modern relationships and how to get the type of women that you want. So we have esteemed guest, Ed Baxter. Ed Baxter, I want you to tell the audience who you are, what led you to this great program and helping men overcome the negative impact of relationships after divorce, and how to spot narcissism in women in this modern milieu called America.
Hey man, thank you for having me on your show.
No doubt.
I'm really honored to be here. And
yes, sir.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No doubt.
Yeah, so I got started doing this because, like most guys, have gone through this kind of thing in the past. Mm-hmm. Their history kind of defines who they are now. And so they go back and they say, well, how can I not repeat this mistake again in the future? And so, I went through this kind of thing before. I'd grown up with a lot of toxic people in my life, and it'd taken a while to really kind of figure out what was going on. And I wanted to not be defined by that. I wanted to go towards what I really wanted in my life, which was to have a great and long-term relationship with a woman that I really wanted, the kind of woman that I always wanted.
Right.
And for a lot of guys, I think that's what they're looking for. They want that partner in life to take them where they want to go. Well, not necessarily take them, but to help support them in their passions and where they want to go and what they want to create in this life. And most guys may find out that they haven't really defined that. And that's a big thing too. So when I was going through this kind of stuff in the past, I've been divorced and I was also cheated on, and I didn't want to repeat that. And so guys usually come to me because they've gone through that kind of thing as well. And so that's how I serve them. Right. Is helping them navigate that. Little did I know that the kind of guys that really resonated with what I do ended up dealing with narcissism or sociopathy or really toxic women in general. Mm-hmm. And so the program that I put together actually deals with that directly. But how I kind of came about figuring this out was I just didn't want to go through it again. I wanted to figure out what was really the right way to make things happen. Right. And things can't be so complicated. You go online, like if you've been betrayed or you've been cheated on any kind of way, betrayal doesn't have to be just infidelity. She could betray you in 1,000 different ways.
Yes.
And, for men really, faithfulness, being able to be loyal, being able to trust your partner is like the number one trait men look for in a woman.
Yes. Right.
And you have to, because that's how nations are built, on loyalty.
Yes, sir.
And without that, you got nothing. And if you're worrying about what your wife's doing, you can't trust her to take care of the house, you can't trust her with your money, you can't trust her with your reputation or any of that stuff, or her sex, then you're not going to be able to move forward in your life. You're going to always be worried about what's going on at home. And it really detracts from everything that you need to be doing moving forward. And so our intimate relationships, I would say, are 70 to 80% of our happiness.
Yes.
Because of that.
Right.
You know, you can't do anything until that is solid. Once that's solid and you have what you wanted in your relationships, then you find out that, hey, what else is there in life? And then you just naturally will go towards, what do I want to create? How do I want to be remembered? What's my legacy?
So it's I'm sorry, go ahead, keep talking.
Go ahead.
So it sounds like to me that you feel that having, and I agree 100%, because, you know, when you look at it in the esoteric, you know, the man is a type of sun and the woman is a type of moon, and she reflects the virtues of the sun as it gives life to her. If that moon happens to get off orbit, then it becomes a cataclysm of epic proportions. So I agree 100%. Loyalty is paramount for men, because if a woman is loyal, a man feels like he can conquer the slaying dragon. I think a lot of men are wounded in this modern milieu called America because they don't have that loyalty. I think some modern women are very parasitic, and they come to the table expecting instead of giving. And what women don't understand, Ed, is that a man can be at his greatest apex when you have a woman that pours into him socially, and spiritually and emotionally. But when she takes that love back from that man, and she's not more or less giving him those things that he needs to be successful, it leaves him in a very paradoxical, more or less distressing moment. What have you seen, Ed, in American men as you counsel them on the negative impacts of divorce, unfaithfulness, and other issues or other social malfeasance that's deleterious to their psyche?
You're asking me, how does it affect them when this happens?
Yes. What have you seen in your practice? What have you seen in your program? What are they telling you? What are the things that you're seeing that's caused these men to be in a state of disrepair?
Well, the thing is that men have the false belief that if they find the love of their life will be complete. Mm-hmm. That's the problem, and that's the hook. Right. And so because they put their entire identity on this, they get very nervous around women. They get insecure, mm-hmm. because their approval of him is what now makes him a worthwhile man. And whenever a guy is looking for the approval of a woman, be it, hey, she likes you, she wants to be with you, she wants to have sex with you, these are ways that guys, they're looking for this approval from her. And when that happens, then it reverses what he needs to be doing in his life. If he's going and he's chasing after making her happy, then that's all he can do, because right. The feminine is all about variety, yes. And change, and being one with nature, essentially, like flowing with life. Like kids, all children are very much in their feminine, right? They just are totally all over the place. They do what they want, they do what's fun, they're just flowing with life. Then there's positive and negative aspects of it. But women generally reside in that space. Now, they're not always in that space, obviously. They can do stuff. Some women are better men than men, unfortunately. But whenever the guy's going towards that, they're putting their whole basis and happiness on something that's ever changing and ever moving, and trying to figure out all the ins and outs and what she's doing and where she's going and why she acts this way and that way. And then he's confused because he's looking at all the content of what she's doing. Then he can never be solid in himself, because he's dedicating his whole life and everything that he's doing based on what she's doing. And she doesn't like that. She can't trust that. If you're like, you put yourself in a place of the woman. If you're got your significant other, and you're trying to find a guy who's going to go somewhere in this world, who's going to do something, make something of himself, and you want to support that guy, but he's making his entire world about you, how can you trust that? Mm-hmm. If you give him a hard time and he completely just, well, I don't want to deal with the fight, I'm just going to keep it peaceful, then how are you going to feel about his ability to go out in the world and kick ass? You're not. You're going to say, this guy is not strong at all. He can't even stand up to me.
Right.
And women have the natural inclination to help men move forward. But sometimes it goes in the wrong direction. And you'll see it in the way that women are always like, hey, you should be doing something better. You shouldn't do this. And it kind of goes into nagging if it gets too far, or it goes into what she wants versus what's needed for the betterment of the couple and his where he needs to go. So women will always be the first ones to tell you, hey, you need to stop smoking, you need to stop drinking, you need to spend more time with your kids, you need to make more money. They'll be the first ones to tell you that, because in their DNA is, what do I need to do to help him see what he's not seeing about himself? And a guy, his thing is not to just believe that, because if he did, then he would just be keeping the peace, right? He needs to look at that and say, okay, that's interesting. She says I'm doing this. Can I objectively look at this and see if she's right, and then make the immediate changes? And immediate changes is key. You don't want to be the kind of guy that's suffering to change all the time.
Right.
Or is she just saying this because she needs more attention or something else?
So it sounds, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, the whole point of, the question, what is it the guys need to do and how do they get all messed up with this, is they put their entire life in the hands of a woman. His whole identity, his fulfillment, everything. And women that are insecure, and toxic women, narcissism and not this kind of thing, are just high on the spectrum of high insecurity. And the more you're insecure, the more everything's about you, because you're looking for security. And when they're high in that, they're looking for him to make them feel secure, or to make them feel safe in some form or fashion, or give them whatever they, usually it's like they want money, they want the status, right? They want to be seen as high status. They want his money for the security of it, to get the things they want, and the other selfish things as well. But I mean, everybody is somewhere on that spectrum of selfishness. It's just a matter of degree. And typically the guys I work with are dealing with women high on that end. And quite honestly, they're perfect matches for the narcissist, because, for the narcissist, everything's about them. And for the guy, he can play the victim and say, well, everything's about her. It's never about me. And so a lot of the work that I do is teaching them, no, damn it, it is all about you. Your life is all about you.
Right. And I agree. So it sounds like to me that when men lose their purpose, Ed, and when they get off their, what I call their masculine axis, that's when their lives tend to implode or explode. And so what it sounds like to me is that you're telling these men that if you didn't have a purpose outside of this woman, if you don't have a purpose outside of this woman, that is the epigenesis to the downfall of relationships. Is that fair to say?
I would go even further to say, if you don't have an identity.
Yes, sir.
You have to have something to anchor to. You have to anchor to who you are and what it is that you want out of this life. That's what you have to anchor to. And that's what we do. That's the first thing. I mean, most of what guys deal with when they're going through this is because they don't have that anchor. And so they're just doing whatever they have to just make people happy, so that they'll like them, so that they grasp on whatever little they have. The thing is, you anchor into who you are, and you're very honest with yourself with who you are and what you want with your life. Then naturally your boundaries will start to come out when somebody tries to pull you off of that. Say you love going to jiu-jitsu, or you love boxing or something like that, and she says, you spend too much time at the gym. Why don't you spend time with me? Right. Maybe your career is very important to you, and you're not spending unreasonable amount of time. You're not spending 16 hours a day, but maybe 10 hours, maybe 11 hours. You don't have kids with her, or maybe you have kids with her and your career is very important. And you say, this is very important to me. I'm not going to give that up. She's like, oh, just take some time off. You work too much. And she'll whittle that away. And you'll work less and less. And now your career's starting to suffer. And now she's unhappy because you're not standing up to her. And now your career is suffering. And now you start falling. Now, maybe she's jealous because you have female friends. Or you just have guy friends, but you're not putting all your attention onto her. Right. She's insecure. She wants to button you up as much as possible. And that's what she wants to do. She wants to make sure that she knows what you're doing, where you're going, because she's afraid you're going to jump off whenever you find out that she's not who she says she is, which ironically is what she's doing, right? It's the classic projection.
Hey, let me ask you a question. When you look at, once again, modern relationships, what percentage would you say of women more or less exhibit this narcissistic trait? As a clinical therapist, we know that narcissistic personality disorder is a real mental health condition. But in your, from your anecdotal experience, what percentage of women would you say exhibit these narcissistic traits based on talking to the men in your program?
Well, I would be totally skewed if I told you that, because I deal with just about only that. And I really don't know, because I don't go out there and talk to enough women. I'm mainly spending all my time working with men. And I would say, but I mean, anecdotally, if I would look at it, how many people do I know in my life? And I know a lot of people exhibit these characteristics. And what is it? Because I'm not a counselor or psychologist. I don't ever pretend to be. I'm a coach. And so what is the number? Like 2%, does you say?
Or did it have narcissistic personality disorder?
Yeah. Some kind of cluster B or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot higher than 2%. It's definitely a lot higher.
Well, I'll tell you, what they do is a lot bigger than 2%.
Right.
Because these women jump from guy to guy to guy. Mm-hmm. And so I would say 25% of men are dealing with this.
Okay, right. Gotcha.
That's probably the best way. And if you just do the math, let's say these women mess up 5 guys in their life, which we know is higher than that. Let's say 2% of those women, that's going to be, and if you just say men and women are equal, that's like 20% of guys right there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 5 different guys, probably low. Conservative numbers, probably 25% of guys have dealt with this. And you can see the signs, Yeah, John's having a terrible divorce. His wife is trying to take him for everything. She's saying, he got a restraining order. His wife got a restraining order, but he's never hit her a day in his life. Mm-hmm. And you hear these stories, and mm-hmm. nobody knows what it is. Mm-hmm. But that's the signs of it. When you hear your friends talking about this, I lost my friend Dave. I haven't seen him forever. This woman's terrible. She just wants his money, but he won't listen to us. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with that, and he won't listen to you because he thinks he's struck gold. Because she's doing the first stage, which is idolizing him, mirroring him, being exactly what he wants. Mm-hmm. And they'll do this because, they want whatever he has. And they know that he's an easy mark, that he will kowtow to whatever her attitude is or whatever she does. And then slowly over time, she starts the devaluing phase where she starts belittling him a little bit at a time. It's kind of like the foot in the door manipulation technique. And kids are really good at this too, right? Just 5 more minutes before they go to bed. Right. But they'll do this and say, you don't need to work so much today. They'll just start getting deeper and deeper in this until everything's suffering. And then now you can do nothing you do is right anymore. And then eventually you find her talking to guys, texting guys, and social media makes it really easy for these women to jump around from guy to guy.
Yes.
And then she just disappears. And it's like, what the hell did I do wrong? I was doing everything I tried, everything she wanted me to do, and she just made everything worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I call it the Ed effect. And I think based on conversation, you matriculated Virginia Polytech, which is famously known as Virginia Tech University, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a STEM school. And how have you more or less used the nuances of STEM to circumnavigate the web in modern relationships? What brought you to that nexus point?
Well, I guess I've always been an engineer. Mm-hmm. I just that's how most guys are. Most guys think like an engineer. Like we're problem solvers. Men are problem solvers. It's just a matter of what you're training so that you know how to effectively solve a problem and ask the right questions. That's mainly where a lot of the training comes from. And then of course, the skills like the math and all that stuff.
Right.
And so, when I was in college, I was doing industrial engineering, and industrial engineering is all about building a system. What are the small levers that make the biggest changes in a system? And usually it's applied to like a factory or something. Hey, how do we make things more efficient? How do we lay out the factory or any of these type of things to make things the most efficient? And look at the overarching system. The big thing that what is not looking at the trees of the forest, but seeing the forest for what it is. Mm-hmm. And then, designing your forest the way it's supposed to be. And I've always been, fascinated with relationships because, I dated women in college that were definitely having mental issues and stuff like this. So trying to figure out what's going on with them, getting sucked up in what they're doing. And I did that even as an adult outside of college. And so when I was kind of getting disinterested in the career that I was doing, I was applying this type of methodology, like a systems approach to dating and relationships in general. So just taking all the big pieces and saying, what is actually real? What's actually working? What is the right parts and pieces? And coming up with a theory of everything. And then pulling out the pieces of that where it matters. And so when I build my programs or I work with guys that look at it that way, like what's what are the parts that they need to button up that will make the effect overall, right? I'm not just looking at, okay, he needs to fix this and that'll make him better. It's just like, I know what the path is for the guy, and then working the different levers, and then that's how it gets there. And people are just like narcissists and anybody else. People are very similar in the way that they do things, the way they approach things. And we all say, hey, we're all very different. We're all different individuals. And that's true. But we all generally act the same. We all generally react to things the same. And with that, and with common problems, common solutions. Mm-hmm. So that's generally how it works. I don't know. It's kind of a high level explanation.
Right. What was your Ed moment? And what I mean by Ed moment, most men come to this realization about the negative effects of more or less relinquishing their power in relationships. But and maybe you said it already. I know you said something about being in college, but what was your true Ed moment that brought you to the brink of despair, and how did you handle that?
It was during my when I found out that my wife was not being faithful.
Right.
And then I looked at it like, what did I do wrong? Well, what I did was I married what I call the 80% girl. Mm-hmm. The girl that was good enough.
Right.
Not this person I really wanted. And so in that circumstance, I didn't do everything I normally would have done if she was somebody I really wanted. And so she felt that. Mm-hmm. And that led ultimately to her finding somebody who did. And me using, just allowing her to chase me so I felt secure. At some point, women will get tired of chasing you. And a lot of guys, they bank their entire relationship on, let your wife chase you, let your wife chase you. But if you don't let her catch you every once in a while, mm-hmm. She'll find somebody who makes her secure, mm-hmm. I should say. Mm-hmm. And so I remember it, I was sitting in my bed, and she was there, and I had this breakdown moment where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to try to be different than I am. I'm not going to try to manipulate women. I'm not going to try to do any of this stuff. I'm just going to be me, damn it. And if women don't like it, that's just too damn bad. And I've always been pretty anchored in who I am.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. And that's just kind of, that's more unique to me than most men. And I find that, I found that to be odd because, you see the world as you see yourself.
Right.
And I just didn't want to go through it again. I didn't want to end up like so many guys who, after a divorce or a betrayal, they get bitter. And now they just don't trust women. They don't, and that would lock you down to having what you really wanted. So I said, well, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to go out there and do it even if it hurts. I'm going to live with an open heart no matter what. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, you can't get hurt. You can be disappointed,
yes,
but you can't be hurt. That's really what it comes down to. You think that she's hurting you, but not really. It's just your expectations of things. And you wrapping your identity around that is what's hurting. The death of that identity that you wrapped up around this person is what's going. And it feels like a real death. But I mean, you as a person, you can have bad emotions. You can have these things, but you can ultimately, what's inside of you cannot be hurt.
And what are you seeing in your program? And I know you work with with men that have similar themes or similar issues. But what are you seeing in this program that has left you baffled regarding the mental health of your clients? Give me like a case that you've seen and it shocked you. And at some point you found yourself maybe struggling to treat this person that had issues with their relationship.
I don't know if I've had one that's super baffling, but I have learned that people are on a continuum. Mm-hmm. Everybody's on this continuum, and the continuum is consciousness. Mm-hmm. How conscious are you or how unconscious are you?
Right.
There tends to be an inflection point somewhere in there. So if you take somebody who is completely self-absorbed and very unconscious, they're going to be looking to the external to make them feel better. And when they're looking to the external to make them feel better, they're trying not to look inside to resolve the problems. It's like having a hoarder's house. The inside of them is the hoarder's house. They don't want to open the front door. They open the door and it's a damn mess. They don't want that.
Right.
So they just keep the door shut, pretend it doesn't happen. They look into the external world to distract them, to make them feel good, and that's where, they get very materialistic. And when that runs out, when the fun and games run out, they'll even go to drama to distract themselves, from what's going on inside. And this is what you see with these toxic individuals. And there is no way that they can have empathy, because in order to have empathy, you got to clean some house.
Right.
It's just not possible. And so they're really far in the unconscious state. In other words, they're not thinking about themselves. They're not really being true to themselves. They're just going through life looking for the latest entertainment. And when they don't get the entertainment, they'll go for the drama. And this is why toxic individuals, or people with a lot of mental problems, everything's about them. Everything is about them because they're suffering so much and they want people to help them. But as you know, they have to help themselves. Right. That's at the end of the day. And so then the other end of the continuum is a very conscious person. A very conscious person knows everything about themselves. They're always uncovering who they are. They're always looking to reserve their issues. That's what they're trying to do. And as they do that, they go up the continuum of consciousness. They become more spiritual. They become more heartfelt. They're more mature. They don't like drama. They live a very boring life, if you would look at it from the outside, because they don't have any craziness going on. They might have some adventures, sure, but the adventures are not there to distract them from what's going on inside. And so what I've learned is, we categorize people with narcissistic tendencies and all this stuff or whatever, or guys that are healthy or whatever, but really it's just people on a continuum. And so where I will get blocked, where I cannot help a guy, is if he's too far down on the unconscious side of the continuum. And every once in a while, and that's why we do calls before we let guys get a program to screen them out, because if they're too far there, they're not going to do the work. Right, they're just going to hit you up on a one-on-one call and they're going to vent to you for an hour. And all they're doing is they're just releasing the pressure out of the pressure cooker, but it doesn't take the water out of it. It doesn't solve the problem. In order to solve the problem, they got to look inside. Yes. And so, that's one thing we don't do. Like, you're not going to come and just bitch for an hour and then leave. It's like, no, you got to do the work. You do the work, brother, you'll get the results. But if you don't do the work, this is what's going to happen. Because, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. And I'm going to interject.
So every once in a while, we'll get a guy who has some serious mental issues. And I don't know what they are because I'm not a counselor, but I can tell that he just wants somebody to vent to or somebody to badger. And I've even had guys say, you're supposed to listen to me and just take it so that I can. I'm like, no, that's not what we're here for. We're here to grow. Men grow through challenge. I'm here to challenge you. If you're not going to grow, I'm sorry, you can't be on the program, because you're going to take away so much of my time and effort with very little results. Whereas I could be using that for guys who are going to use that result. Right. I could help 10, 12 guys in the span that I'm helping one guy barely make any progress.
Well, it sounds like to me your process is very streamlined, and you are 100% correct. Even as a clinical therapist, I tell clients that I'm not the elixir or I'm not the panacea to your problems. You have to come in with a mind ready to work and to have a collaboration, do engagement. And the best results that I get from clients, Ed, are clients that actually want to work the process. So I 100% concur about your sentiment. Guys out there in the media, please donate to the Cash App. Ed Baxter, the relationship expert. I call him the mechanical wizard. Please donate 7 small so I can continue these programs, because we need to get the message out so men like Ed can help men get on their purpose and continue to grow as men in this current malaise that we have. Ed, what do you think is happening in modern relationships? And how can men unwake the sleeping giant that lies within them?
They always have a choice. Mm-hmm. You might think you don't have a choice, but you do. You always have a choice. Mm-hmm. You don't have to hear anybody badger you. You don't have to, hell, you don't even have to come home after work if you don't want to.
Right.
We're completely defined by our fears. Well, if I don't go home, I'm going to never hear the end of it. If I don't tell her what I'm doing, this is what's going to happen. If I don't do this, then men need to fight through fear. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. This is where your strength comes from. Right. On the other side of fear is confidence. You break through a fear, you go do something you didn't think you could do, you'll feel amazing afterwards. And your confidence will spike up. Mm-hmm. And you'll get a little bit more confident. And true confidence comes from competence. And so the only way to become competent is to keep pushing through your fears over and over and over again. And you are sovereign. Don't give up your sovereignty based on what other people want you to do. It's up to you to make your life happy. It's up to you to make things happen in your life. And you may say, oh, well, she put a restraining order on me. I can't go home to my kids. I'm living out of my car. I can't do anything. It's like, yeah, but you have, and you can feel sorry for yourself. And sure, you have been victimized, but being a victim is a choice.
Yes. Right.
And you can sit there in your car and cry all night. That's fine. But then the next morning, you better get up and get after it.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Tap into your warrior spirit and make something happen.
Yes, sir.
That's where your power is going to come from. That's where your happiness is going to come from. Don't take that crap. You don't have to take anything from anybody. Right. The problem with men these days is that they've been taught to be compliant and complacent.
Yes.
And to just take whatever life gives them. No, fight. Men are designed to fight for what's right.
Right.
We are warriors for justice, and go for it. Go after what's right.
Right.
Don't be the sheep, man. Be the sheepdog. Go out there, chase off the wolves, and keep the herd in check.
Well, I call it the cream puff effect.
Cream puff effect.
Because I'm definitely a warrior and I'm definitely a fighter. I bow to no man. I respect all, but I bow to none. I never have and I never will. It's not in my nature to bow, but it is my nature to be diplomatic and try to find resolve and change. I titled this show, The Manhood Chronicles, Unwaking the Sleeping Giant, as it relates to relationships. What did you find out about that sleeping giant, Ed Baxter, that gave him a greater love for himself and helping men overcome the hurdles that they're currently dealing with, Ed Baxter?
Well, when I was in project management, and I used to do construction in the precast field, they said, hey, let's get Ed to be a project manager. And I'm like, okay. And I was incredibly afraid of conflict back then. Mm-hmm. And it was incredibly draining to me because I was always having to fight. And if you're in the construction world, especially when you're doing like massive multi-million-dollar prison projects, there's some contractors out there that will do anything they can to get an extra dollar out of you. And if you let them, you will destroy your project. You have what's called scope creep. Before you know it, you're doing all this stuff you're not supposed to be doing, just because they'll yell at you and stuff like that. And so I'd get very stressed out about that. And I had to really get strong in who I was. And then it became apparent that as I started working the project and working other things in my life, that I realized that the stuff that I'm doing makes a whole lot more sense to what other people are doing. And so you kind of, at some point, there's an inflection point of competency where you're like, if you think that I'm doing something incorrectly, I'm not just going to believe you.
Right.
You have to show me. And then, put your ego aside and say, okay, he's right. Let's do it better. Be objective about it. But on the other hand, being very solid in who you are and the way you want to do it first, and make the other person prove that you're wrong, instead of just assuming, oh, I'm a fraud or I can't do this or anything like that. And that took some time. But then, at some point, when you start dealing with conflict, you start to like it a little bit. Mm-hmm. You start to like it, and you're like, okay, well, fine. If you want to tussle, let's tussle. We'll take it all the way. Mm-hmm. And then you find that, hey, you may lose. The whole point of it was just fear of loss. Men being afraid to have conflict with their wife or anybody else. It's just they're afraid to lose.
Hey, you made a very valid point. Somebody used to, share with my dad when I was young. I said, in order to have peace, you must have war. A lot of men try to more or less not get involved in conflict because they see conflict as something negative to the relationship. But I say conflict is essential to overcoming barriers. Before there can be peace, there must be war. And that war that I mean is that you have to get to the nexus point where you can identify the problems that are causing a chasm in the relationship and find ways to not only address it, but to let the woman or man in your life know that you're not going to tolerate it. I'm not confrontational by nature, but I will confront you if I have to. I always have and I always will. But tell me why conflict and more or less, Ed, dealing with that conflict is so important in relationships, and so many men have what I call the cream puff effect.
What do you mean by cream puff effect?
Well, they're just weak. They don't stand up for principles. They don't stand up for virtues. They don't stand for anything. They just kowtow and they just let things be instead of challenging and expressing how they feel.
Yeah. And what's interesting is even if you put a group of people together and you say, let's resolve everything peacefully, what happens? Now the conflict gets quieter and more insidious. Mm-hmm. now it becomes very quiet and manipulative. The conflict's still there. It's just not so loud. You can see that now, like in the world. Like some of it's loud and some of it's very creepy. Some of it's very like, I'm just going to trick you into doing this kind of thing. Then you must shine the light on and say, no, you're doing this, and bring it out to a loud conflict. Show the fraud for what it is.
Right. More or less go along to get along. In the evolution of this program, when did this program start, Ed Baxter, and what has been your efficacy rate as it relates to helping men get over the issues that they're dealing with?
Every guy that does work in a program is successful. I don't have guys who are unsuccessful in a program, but they have to do the work, and it's not that hard. There's just three main things you got to do: the meditation we outlined, the letting go exercises, and the ruminating stopping technique. You do that, do it consistently, you're going to feel a hell of a lot better in 2 weeks. Usually there's a giant inflection point you turn around, and that's what I'm looking for. I built the program last January, so a little less than a year ago, and I wasn't able to build such a program before then, because in order to really deal with the last part of the program, which is being able to deal with the fear of betrayal, not being able to trust any woman and that kind of stuff, I had to deal with it myself. Just a couple little skeletons I had to dust out of the closet in order to do that. But then it took all the stuff that I was doing up until that point to build the program. And I originally didn't make it to deal with narcissism or that kind of stuff, but that was what guys were coming to me for. And so I scrambled and put a couple extra videos in a program to deal with that directly. But it's been highly effective for it. So, I mean, usually I look for, there's a couple of inflection points for the guy's demeanor that I'm looking for. On average, we've had about 300 guys go through the program this year. 2 weeks is usually the first thing we're looking at. The guy, his wife just left. He doesn't know what's going on. He's freaking out. He's upset. He just wants her back and all this stuff. To, I'm not sure I want her back, and I'm actually feeling pretty damn good with her not being here. And I don't have any desire to talk to her. I'm feeling way better. Usually that's a couple weeks, maybe 3, depending on how difficult a situation is. I got some backup plans if it's not working. That's the first inflection point. The second one is about 2 months in, when they get up to like module 4 of the program, and they start doing like all the stuff we're talking about here, right? Finding who you are, what's your purpose, where you're going with your life, really building your life out to be awesome for you. So the inflection point I'm looking for there is life is awesome. I'm so much happier now. I don't know why I stayed with that woman for so long. Everything's so great now. And the cool thing is that it's the same process. If you have a relationship that fell apart and it was 2 actually very healthy people versus something like that, then it also is the same process if you want to get somebody back. Men really, really only need to do the one thing and get their life back on track. So the program is about getting your life back on track. And if you never had it on track, this is how you get it on track. And that's what you do to either get her back or to have a great life. Either way, you win. If she doesn't come back, you're feeling great. If she does come back, you're feeling great and she's back. Great.
Right.
But what I find is that guys typically, if they've been betrayed, then she's looking for the escape, right? She's looking externally to escape from her problems. She's not looking inside to solve it. Because, a relationship, people think, oh, the grass is greener on the other side, but it's not. It's greener where you water it. So you got to water the relationship, and that's going to be better, be a lot better. But some people refuse to do that. They don't want to put anything into it. They go look outside the relationship to make them feel happy. And so what they find out is a guy who's been betrayed by his woman, and I'm sure it's the same for the other way around, is, if the man betrays, they go out there, they look for that out there. They go externalize, right? They're becoming more unconscious, escaping from their problems. They go out there and escape from it. And then the person who's been betrayed, they typically go internal. Let me solve these problems. Let me go grow and figure out what's happening. And then they grow a tremendous amount in a short amount of time. And then they look at their partner and they say, they didn't grow at all. They actually went downhill. And typically what's been going on in these relationships is the person who's more conscious has been artificially propping up the unconscious one. And so they fall back down to how they were, and they go even further south. They don't grow at all. It usually goes worse. And so at this point, 2-3 months out of the relationship, especially if they're in a program, I've yet to find a guy who says, I would get back with her, because he'll look at her and say, she hasn't done anything. She jumped with this guy. Now she's with another one. She hardly sees her kids, or she's still trying to fight with me over the kids. I just want to see them a normal amount. I'm not trying to have a fight. And that's just what happens. And that's okay, because I'm just happy that the guy's doing what he needs to do. He's got his life back on track, and he's realigning to what he wants to, what he should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Right. It sounds like to me you're in a happy relationship now, and what did you learn about yourself on your downcline? And what did you learn in your current relationship that you did more or less exude in your prior relationship?
One, I honored myself. Mm-hmm. So, in the previous relationship, I settled.
Right.
I decided not to settle. This is what I want. I want a woman who can match me in my growth. This program makes conscious men, makes men who really get out there, makes them powerful to themselves. And by the time they're like through module 4 of the program, women are seeking them out. They're getting a lot of attention because women want a guy who's emotionally strong in himself. Doesn't mean that he's stoic and has no emotions. It means that, the emotion can get strong, but he knows how to process it and handle it. This allows her to be safe and vulnerable in that relationship. Mm-hmm. Right. He needs to be strong, even in the face of whatever. He doesn't have to be like Elon Musk successful or Arnold Schwarzenegger with muscle. Those are just symptoms of them being mentally strong and strong in their vision and purpose. And women want men who are strong in their vision and purpose. They don't have to be all these things. They don't have to be super sensitive and all. They just want a guy who's strong. That's what makes a woman feel special, is the guy is in his purpose. He's in his zone. And then he puts that aside for a few minutes and gives her 100% undivided attention. That's what makes her feel special. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But she knows he has to go back to it. She knows that. And so she doesn't want him to go out of it, but she respects that. And that makes her feel even more attracted to him because she knows that he's a man going places and that she might not be the most favorite thing in his life, but he's definitely the most favorite person. Right. I like that. Right. And so that was where, this is stuff I had to learn myself. And I did a lot of study to find this because they don't teach this to men. This is just isn't taught. Mm-hmm. And so, when I was looking around and wanting to have that great relationship, I was very clear on what I wanted. I wanted a woman I didn't have to save. I wanted a woman who could match me in my endeavors and support me in the role that I wanted to do and go and where I want to go. And you find that if you find a woman that matches you very well, she will contribute to your freedom. And women will often say, well, he's afraid to commit. He's not afraid to commit. He's afraid of losing freedom. Right. And men go towards freedom in life. So you ask yourself, if you're a woman, what can I do to make this guy commit? Well, what can you do to contribute to his freedom? What is it that he might not even know this. So this is quite a task. I mean, if he goes through the program, he'll know it, but he might not know this. And so for the woman, that's really hard. She doesn't want to be the one to teach him how to go find his passion and purpose. That goes into mothering energies, and she doesn't want that. She wants a guy who's already got this figured out. Mm-hmm. 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 You talked about the term Stoicism, and there was a time when modern men from the past were more stoic in relationships. They didn't really show emotions. It was what it was. Do you feel like sometimes being stoic can be beneficial in a relationship? And if so, tell me how and why. Well, it's very pragmatic. Mm-hmm. Right? Your emotions don't change reality, but it is your internal reality. So you have to be careful with it. I mean, yes, a lot of people say that what I do is very stoic, but I've never really researched Stoicism. I did a little bit, but because guys were saying my stuff is very stoic. But it's not, it's just a matter of being pragmatic. And if you want to take it to the extreme with pragmatism, then realize that if you don't get your internal world settled, your external world is going to reflect that. And it doesn't matter how stoic you try to be, you're going to fail. Because it's all going to pile up inside you and it's going to spill over. You're going to have to vent. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to be grumpy, grouchy all the time. You're going to snap at your wife. You're going to snap at your kids because you're not doing what you need to be doing. And you're not being successful. Men need to win. They need to win all the time. They need to win every day. And they need to be appreciated for their wins. And so if they come home to a house where everything's all in chaos and they can't sit down and relax and decompress from their day, and their wife is on their back telling him, hey, this isn't going well and that's not going well, then he feels like he's winning and he's failing in his marriage. He's failing when he gets home. And he doesn't like that. He comes home to failure. He needs to feel like he's winning.
You know, there's a theological tenet that actually highlights that sentiment, and it says that a quarrelsome and a contentious woman will run a man to the rooftop. A lot of modern men, Ed Baxter, are more or less looking for peace, especially as they get older, and especially as testosterone levels drop. Men need peace in order to conquer the dragon. Why do you think so many men are not at peace in modern relationships? You know, do you think it's partially themselves? Or do you think it's part social conditioning, or do you think it's a combination of both?
Oh, well, you said it yourself. Peace comes from conflict. Mm-hmm. He wasn't willing to fight for that peace. Mm-hmm. He thought it was just the natural order. You're not going to have peace within yourself until, you know, Jocko Willink writes a book, Discipline Equals Freedom. Mm-hmm. That's where your peace comes from. It comes from being able to overcome your fears, make yourself do the things you don't want to do.
Right.
Get and have the habits you need to do. Go towards what you need to do. Only allow people in your life that are going to love and honor who you are and your vision and purpose. You know, don't be an asshole. Don't go out there and just be tough all the time. Well, I'm just a guy who speaks his mind. It's like, no, you're just a jerk.
Right.
You know,
right.
Bring your temperate with heart, obviously. And then when he gets old, and if he's done a good job when he's younger and his testosterone's raging, then he should be able to have a peaceful retirement. But if he's not, if he hasn't, you can't run away from it. You're gonna have to fight it at some point.
Suicide rates, Ed Baxter, is very profound in modern America. I think the suicide rate definitely increases more as men more or less deal with divorce. I'm going to ask you a question. If you feel comfortable answering it, do so. If not, fine. But, you know, when you were going through your crisis, or what I call your manhood chronicles, did suicide ever enter your mind? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Well, I never was to the point where I was like, well, I'm going to actually execute this thing. But I did get to the point, and I remember clearly saying to myself, I'm not going to kill myself, but I could see why guys would.
Right.
And I mean, we get a lot of guys on the brink of it. I mean, we've had a lot of guys say that the program literally saved their life. And that's amazing. I had no idea that it has quite that impact, but yeah, this kind of thing. And it's because we didn't get what we were promised. Right? You did everything you could your whole life, the way you were told, the way you were promised, and you failed spectacularly. And so the suicide option is because, well, there's no other way. There's no other way. So what's the point? And the whole point is there is another way. There's always another way. You're just being a victim and you're falling into your victimhood.
Right.
You're not a victim. You don't have to kill yourself. Keep on fighting. I mean, life is a gift. You're just gonna, and you know, when you're suicidal, all you can think about is yourself. Right? You leave your kids, leave your family. Right? You're going very unconscious on the scale. You need something external to fix it because your internal state's messed up. No, the solution is to go inside. Now you can't fight the demons anymore. You are at the precipice where you literally have to resolve your demons or you die. And so most people, you know, when they're feeling good like this, they say, well, why would you ever get to that point? Well, when you're in a state, that's all you can see.
Right.
You can't see out of the state. You're stuck in it. It's like a glass ceiling. You know, you're going up this glass ceiling. You know, you're hitting up on the bottom of the ceiling because let's say you're insecure, you're paranoid, your wife might be running around, and you get into this paranoid state. And you can't see over it. You can only see down the consciousness scale. If you're higher conscious, you can say, hey man, you can just relax. You don't have to feel, you know, and you have higher perspective. But when you're in that emotional state, you can't see up the scale. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I call it the breaking point. Guys, once again, please donate to the Cash App so we can continue to bring these programs with great guests like Ed Baxter and a lot of men, so that, you know, I can, you know, honor these men with their time. Ed, we got a few minutes left, brother. Before we end, because I know you got to go, and I'm grateful for having you on this show and this panel. Hopefully at some point we can have a panel of men if you get the time. I know you're a very busy man like myself. But, you know, let's talk about what do you feel and maybe you answered it earlier, but why do you feel that narcissism is so prevalent in modern women?
I don't know if it's more prevalent. It's just easier to exercise.
Right.
I think in the past that people didn't know what it was. And a lot of society does say, hey, you should treat her like a princess. You should, and you should honor your wife. Absolutely. But, saying going all the way to like a princess and stuff, and it's a little bit far. And they tell women that, hey, you should expect a man to be like this and expect a man to be like that. And they forget that women have to earn their place too.
That's it. Earn. That's the key word. That's the key word, Ed. Earn. They have to earn. I think a lot of men don't make them earn it. So many women have entitlement issues. They come into relationships feeling entitled. And because men placate to that entitlement, it doesn't make her respect that man. A good friend of mine, Ty Cutler, did a show with me, and we both concurred that women want to look up to men. They want a man that they can look up to, a man that's her pillar, that's her rock, that's her fortress, that's her sun in the esoteric. So I agree with that 100%. She needs to earn that place in that man's life. So keep talking. Excellent point.
Well, yeah, you're right. So what happens when, so children are very unconscious as well, right? They're looking for the external to make them happy all the time. And what happens when you have an entitled child and you don't give them what they want? They throw a temper tantrum. And so typically in a relationship, if you're with a woman who's entitled, she's going to throw a temper tantrum when she doesn't get what she wants. And how do you deal with a kid who keeps bugging you about it? Hey, I want the chocolate. Why don't you give it to me? I just want it so badly. It's just so bad, right? They might even get mad at you and start trying to hit you. They might try to make you feel guilty. They might try to do all these things. But what do you do as a parent? You sound like a broken record and you say, it ain't happening. You can talk to your blue in the face. It's never going to happen. If you continue to hit me or do this, we're going to escalate the consequences. But, with your kid, you can't just leave, right? But but the woman, you can say, or anybody in life, doesn't even have to be your wife. It could be anybody. If you keep this up, you're going to lose my time and attention, which is your most valuable gifts to give to people. You will lose my time and attention. And eventually I'll walk right out of your life. And so the cure for entitlement is to not accept the entitlement. Now, you can't necessarily fix attitude. So it's really up to the woman, and it's really how much you're willing to tolerate. You may find somebody who's incredibly entitled will keep doing this about every 2 to 3 weeks. Just do what I call a conscious spanking, and then it'll come back around 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, something else. And it can be an ongoing battle. And so guys generally like to have serenity in their life. They don't want to do that. So it's better to get with somebody who's peaceful and not entitled, right?
Yes, and we call that Ed in my spiel work. It's part of behavior school work. It's called positive and negative reinforcement. And unfortunately, a lot of men negatively reinforce bad behavior by capitulating to the whims of an entitled and narcissistic woman, which in essence leads to their demise. Ed Baxter, about 5 minutes before we sign off, man, you've done an awesome job explaining your program. Tell me once again, what is the name of this program? We're about to sign off in 5 minutes, but what's the name of this program once again? How can men get in contact with you? And so what's the name of this program again? And how can men get in contact with Ed Baxter, the mechanical wizard of relationships?
Mechanical wizard. All right, I'll put that in my D&D profile.
Copyright. Make sure you give me that.
So, you go to the website genuineattraction.com.
Okay.
The name of the program is the only one you'll find there, and it's called Move On After Betrayal. So if you're in a situation where your wife's leaving you, she wants to leave, or you've been betrayed, or you're single, you're having a hard time getting women back in your life, you've been through this, it'll work for any of those scenarios. And if you want to email me directly, it's ed@genuineattraction.com. So again, it's genuineattraction.com, and the program is Move On After Betrayal. There's also a Facebook group, so you can look for that as well, Genuine Attraction. And it's full of guys dealing with this. It's heavily moderated by me, because I can't stand a bunch of BS. And it's incredibly supportive. I mean, just that group alone, that's free, it doesn't cost anything.
Right.
And if you're interested in a program, click on those links. Set up a call with us. You might get me or Ty, who is also on here. He also does enrollment calls with me. He works with me,
right.
or a couple of the other guys, and make sure the program works for you. We only work with guys we know it's going to work for them. Generally speaking, most guys get through, but we do hit up every once in a while the unconscious one. But there you go. There you have it. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's about 4 minutes till the hour of 1 o'clock. We're in the age of enlightenment, or the age of Aquarius, with the mechanical relationship wizard, Ed Baxter. Listen, Ed, we got to do this again, man. Hopefully we can have a panel of men, if time permits, and they can actually tell their story, and we can more or less recalibrate what's going on. But listen, Ed, it was a pleasure, man. We will do this again. We're about to sign off, guys. This is the 11th episode of the Manhood Chronicles with relationship expert and coach Ed Baxter and his genuine attraction approach. So, Ed, man, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Ed, and let's stay in contact, all right? Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, brother, signing off. Be well. This is the 11th episode of the Manhood Chronicles, and the name of this show was entitled Waking the Sleeping Giant and Relief After Divorce and Betrayal. Cash out 7 Smalls so we can continue to bring quality content and bring esteemed guests like Ed Baxter to the show as we continue to move forward in this current milieu called America and modern relationships. So we're about to sign off. Please, once again, donate to the Cash App. And we're about to make it official in a minute.